Today, we're going to talk about the conflict in the Middle East and why the quest for peace is so incredibly difficult. That's next on Significant Insights. Hello, welcome to the program. Glad you could join me. Nearly 3 years ago, after the end of World War II, Israel established their own state. The next day, the Arabs declared war against them. And since that time, Israel has been challenged day in and day out. A lot of peace negotiations have been held, and some agreements have been signed, most notably between Israel and Jordan and Israel and Egypt. But the core conflict between the Israelis and the Palestinians remain. Last summer, I had the opportunity to speak with Moran Birman, the Council for Public Diplomacy with the Council of Israel. We talked about a variety of topics, starting with a change in U.S. presidential administrations. Thank you for taking time to be with me. I appreciate it.
Great to be here, Jerry.
I have a lot of questions.
I'm here to answer.
I think the first and at least a very important one is under our previous administration in the United States, our relationship with Israel, our closest ally, seemed to suffer. What was the response of the Israeli on the street about what was happening? Was there a deep concern that there could be a continued breach? What was the general attitude? I know the attitude from leadership was deep concern. What about the average Israeli?
So, of course, as you mentioned, I think that the relationship between Israel and the U.S. is stronger than any specific president or administration. And Israelis know and Israelis appreciate everything that the U.S. does for Israel and the long friendship between the two countries. In the time of President Obama, I think maybe you can argue that the Israeli on the street did not always understand everything President Obama did. For example, the first visit to the Middle East by President Obama was to Egypt, and he didn't visit Israel, as opposed to President Trump, who visited Israel just a few weeks after he came into office. And the Israelis appreciate that, and we understand this is a message of friendship. So I do think that the average Israeli appreciates the message that the current president sends to Israel. In the same way, he might not appreciate that some of the things President Obama said or did, but we are looking forward to work with that administration. We still think that doesn't really matter who the president is, but it's the friendship between the two countries and between the people in both countries that matters the most.
Because you feel that perhaps the relationship transcends just the leadership, and that the pressure from the population could create enough pressure and to keep the relationship going.
So yes, I think that the relationship is stronger, and it's based on shared values and interests between the two countries for decades. Actually, 11 minutes after the State of Israel was declared, the American President Truman at that time supported the State of Israel, and we remember that. And that friendship literally began at the 11 minutes after the founding, the official founding of the State of Israel, and we can still see it today. So that's stronger, and the people, both here in the U.S. and in Israel, understand that friendship, common interest, the cooperation, the security cooperation, the economic cooperation, cooperation in international organizations, everywhere. The U.S. is the closest ally and most important ally Israel has. This was the situation since 1948. This still is, and we are certain this will be the case in the future as well.
Once again, we are now talking about a peace treaty between the Palestinians and the Israelis. Our president has said that he believes that it can happen. He has traveled to some of the Arab countries and has gotten what appears at least to be some pretty positive reaction from the Arab countries, and what appears to be the possibility of at least getting the parties back to the table. We've been through this before. We've been through it a number of times before. Are you hopeful?
I have to be. I think that in many times in the past, I'm not sure that my parents or grandparents believed that we can achieve peace with Egypt after the wars we had with them, but we have. So I have to be hopeful. We know that we're in a certain point where it might look unrealistic, but we are hopeful, and I am hopeful because I know that the people in both sides want that peace to happen. This is and this should be our goal of both people. And unfortunately, we see the Palestinian side still not agreeing to engage in direct negotiations. We still see them pay salaries to terrorist families. We still see the incitement in their schools and education and media. So it's hard for us to see the solution. I believe it's possible.
Yeah. Usually when you talk about a treaty, you talk about some common ground. There is probably some common ground, but the fact that in the Hamas Charter, it not only states that their goal is the end of Israel as a state, almost suggesting genocide of the Jewish people, but in their charter, they also declare the fact that they are not the least bit interested in any kind of a treaty, and that a treaty would be considered a compromise. Though they have, some of the leadership has kind of said with their head or with their mouth, yeah, we could talk about that. Could there possibly be any trust that they would really depart that much from their charter? I mean, that leaves not much room for common ground, doesn't it?
So I think that when we look at the history of negotiating with the Palestinians, we had this trust in the beginning, in the Oslo Accords, the beginning of the 1990s, where we gave some of the cities to Palestinian control. But what happened since, and especially you can see it in what happened in Gaza in 2005, in what we call the disengagement from Gaza. Israel withdrew. We took out all the soldiers and all the Israeli citizens from the Gaza Strip. And the idea was to try to create something and try to help Gaza being more friendly, try to reach towards an agreement, towards peace. But what we got from that day until actually today, just a few minutes before this interview, rockets shot from the Gaza Strip on Israel.
So when you look at Gaza, Gaza was a model of what could happen if there was a Palestinian state, and we see what has happened. Does that model then create a real anxiety on the part of Israelis that, hey, why would that not happen if there was a Palestinian state in the West Bank?
Well, it does, and the most important thing to Israel in any negotiations and in any agreement with any other side is the security of the Israeli people. We would not get to a solution which does not make sure the Israelis are secure, whether it's demilitarization, whether it's UN forces or inspecting forces of some sort. This is the most important thing. I wish we would be able to trust that the people in the Gaza Strip. We tried to, but we did. What happened was rockets until this day.
When we come back, we'll talk about concessions both sides will have to make for peace. Join us after the break.
Of course, we will have to withdraw from some of the settlements and some of the army bases in Judea and Samaria or in the West Bank, like what happened in Gaza. But we will have to make sure there is security for the people of Israel.
TLN is a donor-supported station, and programs like you just watched are made possible by viewers like you. To donate, please go to tln.com/donate or call us at 630-801-3857.
Welcome back. Today I'm talking with Moran Birman. He's the Consul for Public Diplomacy with the Consul of Israel. We're talking about the Middle East conflict and his hope for peace. What are some concessions that you believe the Israelis could make to get to the table or to get past the table to an actual treaty?
Well, of course, there are the bigger challenges, which are the status of Jerusalem, what the Palestinians refer to as the right of return, which is, they claim the refugees which left in the beginning of the State of Israel, descendants, their grandsons, their granddaughters.
That they get all their property back.
And the property. So all these descendants who live in the Middle East, and some of them probably live in the US and many other countries, should get the right to return to Israel. Of course, we disagree, and of course, this will not be Israel if that happened. That's a very big issue. And the settlements, as I said, some settlements are part of big cities. Some settlements are big cities. Certain parts of Jerusalem are considered to be settlements. Of course, the Israeli government does not see it in that way. So, of course, we will have to withdraw from some of the settlements and some of the army bases in Judea and Samaria or in the West Bank, like what happened in Gaza. But we will have to make sure there is security for the people of Israel.
What would you say would be one of the most important things that could happen in Israel today that would make a difference for the future?
We would like to see in Israel, maybe it's not something that's inside Israel, we would like to see a change in the other side, in the Palestinian side. I think that President Abbas he's in his 12th year of his 4-year term. We will probably, at the near future, we'll see a different leader to the Palestinian people, and we hope he will lead towards an agreement. The Israelis, it's a very diverse country. We have big public debates, discussions about many things, politics, and a lot more. But we want peace. We are tired of this conflict. We would like to see I went to serve at the IDF, and I would like to see my future children not serving at the army. And this is what we would like to see. Israel is a thriving economy. It's a great country to visit, as you probably know, and it's a very good place to live in. And we would like also to live peacefully with our neighbors.
You know, it's interesting because if I had the average Palestinian, and especially some of the Palestinians that I know, sitting in that chair, and I asked them that same question, they would have almost precisely the same answer. And a lot of the Palestinians and Israelis are living together just like that. in the city of Jerusalem. I can walk into the Armenian section, the Christian section, the Jewish section, and the Arab sector, and it's all one village. It's all the old city of Jerusalem. So there is a model of that.
Mm-hmm.
And if that model then could be expanded, and you didn't have Hamas, you didn't have Hezbollah, you didn't have the Palestinian Authority that have totally different objectives, the people probably could live in peace pretty well, couldn't they?
Yes, and I'll give you another example. I was born in a kibbutz very close to the border with Jordan in Israel. And my father told me that when he was young, and that was actually before the State of Israel was founded, he remembers a Jordanian person riding a donkey from the village in Jordan to the kibbutz, selling produce to the people in the kibbutz, and he was friendly with them. And then when the State of Israel was founded, of course, Jordan was part of the Arab armies that attacked Israel. So of course, they didn't see this person. But in 1994, almost 50 years later, we had peace treaty with Jordan. Nobody believed that we'll have that. Jordan was attacking Israel in 1948 and again in 1967. But now we have peace with Jordan, so I can't just walk and cross the border and see and meet the people there in that village. But I can cross the border at the border crossing, all the security checks, but I can get to the same village and I can probably meet the same person or his son or his daughter, which is probably still lives there. So at the beginning, they were friends. Then something happened. There was a war. But eventually, we understood that peace is the right solution, and it's the common interest of both sides. So as much as it's hard to see that with the Palestinian side, as you said, I think it's possible.
When that treaty was signed with Jordan, my wife and I had the privilege of being in Jordan. And we were in a small village in Jordan, and I can tell you the Jordanians were incredibly excited that this was happening because of the same reasons. They want to live in peace, they want to raise their families, they want to work, they want to take care of things, and we pray that we can arrive at that point with a treaty that would be lasting. Hey, thank you. This has been a privilege. I appreciate you taking time with me.
Thank you for having me.
Pastor Jack Hayford reminds us that as believers, we cannot be consistent with the whole of Scripture and be passive toward the Jews and toward Israel. Our place in God's present order links us with the Jews as people and with their land. We can and must pray and advocate for peace, no matter how elusive it may seem. And as we've discussed today, Israel currently enjoys peace with its neighbors, Egypt and Jordan. So it is possible with the Palestinians. Final thoughts on Israel right after this.
In Genesis 12, we see that Abraham was called to come out from among his kindred and brethren, to become the first Hebrew, the first one who crossed over into this relationship with the one true God. That story is still ongoing because in Genesis 12, 1 through 3, we read that in Abraham, all the nations of the earth will be blessed.
Thank you for watching. The program you just watched is made possible by viewers like you. We would like to thank you for your continued support. To donate, please go to tln.com/donate or call us at 630-801-3857.
You know, I'm sure that some watching our program today feel that peace will never come to the Middle East. Others really don't think that much about it because it's someplace far away. But as believers, we do need to care deeply about peace in Israel. Myles Weiss, who leads Beit Abba, congregation of the Father's House Church in Napa, California, talks more about this in today's Final Thoughts.
Shalom, we are living in the most momentous time in history. We're standing between two mountains, the mountain of the coming of Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus Christ, and the mountain of his soon return. And we are living in that era where we're looking towards the return of Jesus. You know, there's a little mountain right before that next big one, and that is the regathering of the Jewish people, the establishing of the state of Israel, and the readying for the landing pad for Jesus to come back. Where? Not Brussels, not Washington, D.C., but to Jerusalem. He's going to come back in like manner, it says in the book of Acts. Because of that, we have an obligation to fulfill as believers Psalm 122, verse 6. We need to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. You'll often hear my wife and I say, Shalu, Shalom, Yerushalayim. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Why? It actually is an invitation to look into the condition of and the state of the people of Jerusalem, but it's also a promise that prosperity and blessing will come to those who do say that prayer and mean it in their hearts. It's fascinating to me that this story goes all the way back to the cross for those of us who believe, and beyond that, 2,000 more years to the call of Abraham. In Genesis 12, we see that Abraham was called to come out from among his kindred and brethren, to become the first Hebrew, the first one who crossed over into this relationship with the one true God. That story is still ongoing, because in Genesis 12, 1 through 3, we read that in Abraham, all the nations of the earth will be blessed. What's the greatest blessing? The Messiah. But God is so generous that he not only gives through the Jewish people the blessing of the Word, the patriarchs, the prophets, the wisdom writings, and Messiah himself, but also has chosen to take this little group of people and through us, not me, but my friends, bring the most amazing technological breakthroughs, medical breakthroughs, help for the world, healing for the hopeless in all kinds of ways. And yet we're the most reviled people on the earth. So I want to call you today as a believer in Jesus, as a Christian, as someone who knows the power of the Word, to become Shomrei Achumot, those that stand on the wall. According to Isaiah 62, we're to stand on the wall for Zion's sake and shout to the Lord until he makes Jerusalem a praise in the earth. I'm excited about the shared destiny of Jews and Christians. We see it unfolding every day all around us. We see works like Beit Abba at the Father's house, where Jewish ministry is being inculcated and strengthened and supported to outreach for the Jewish people, but also to train Christians as to where we come from, where the Christian faith comes from. So today, I just want to bless you. I want to say a blessing and a prayer over you as we close this, just to say something that goes back to the book of Numbers, and it was a promise that whenever this is said, that the people who hear it would have the word of the Lord on their heart and a blessing from God on their forehead. So here's my prayer over you today. Yivarecha Adonai v'yismarecha, Ya'eh Adonai panav alecha v'chonecha, Yisah Adonai panav alecha v'hisem lecha Shalom. The Lord bless you. The Lord be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and grant you his peace. B'Hashem Yeshua, in the name of our Messiah. God bless you. Shalom.
Thanks, Myles. I deeply am grateful for the work that you're doing there in Naples with the church and all of the ministry that you have that is a balance reaching out across the barriers to try to bring people together. Thank you for what you're doing. You know, I remember an incredible time in my life when Israel was signing the agreement with Jordan. The same day, that afternoon, late in the afternoon, Shirley and I happened to be in Jordan, and we were in a small village, and the shopkeeper in a store, as all this is on television, brought out rugs and set on the ground for all of us. And Shirley and I had the opportunity to sit together with Jordanians who were all applauding, and they were watching this in absolute awe. And they kept asking us, what are Israelis like? You know, what are the Israelis like? And then we got back to Israel. The Israelis are saying, what were the Jordanians? How do they feel about this? What do they feel about it? And I've had Palestinians to ask those same questions, because the point of it is that the average person in Israel and Jordan and Egypt and the Palestinians all are looking for the same thing, peace. And we need to pray that God will give them that peace that they desire. Thanks for joining me. God bless you. See you next time.